Philadelphia Story?
Yeah.
So picture James Stewart and what's her name, Ruth Hussey talking to Katharine Hepburn, and so Katharine Hepburn is spoofing them on being like a snob, and they're undercover reporters. Anyway, it's a comedy, and gosh, if you haven't seen it, come on, guys. Okay, so uh, Katharine Hepburn asks one of them, I guess James Stewart, and where are you from? And he says, West Bend. And she said, that sounds like dancing or something. And because she's spoofing them. Then she asked Ruth Hussey where she's from, and she says, Duluth. Can you believe
Oh,
it? And she says about Duluth, oh, that's somewhere west of here or something.
Ah,
yeah,
I'll
I don't
rewatch
know.
Hilarious.
Philadelphia
So
Story.
you've got to watch Philadelphia
Yeah,
Story.
well, I've
Both of
seen
you,
it before,
both of you,
but ages ago. So
yeah.
When
still,
So
when was On the Beach?
Yeah, on the
1959.
beach was,
Pardon?
1959.
yeah,
1915.
59.
See,
Yeah.
after I saw that, I dreamt it. And I was in it with my family, and the cloud was coming, and it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was terror.
We had the first air raid drill was when I was in second grade in 1951 or two. And they didn't tell us what it was. They
Can
said
I
it
have
was
my
a
game?
they said it was an air raid drill, and we had to go out in the hall and sit up against the wall and cover our heads. And I thought it meant that all the air was suddenly going to disappear and we weren't going to be able to breathe because they didn't tell us what an air raid was and why we were having a drill about it. But that's my first memory of the that focus on nuclear war.
Yeah.
Well, group, I am going to get us started. We are a couple minutes past 7, and I'm so glad to see everyone that was able to join us tonight. Of course, this is movie club. This is related to the Mick LaSalle classes, but not specifically attached to it. It's just a gathering of Mick LaSalle students who want to talk about a movie. And tonight we are so fortunate to have Yogesh being our facilitator who chose our film tonight, the
Sorry, if I need.
1964 version of Failsafe. And if everyone would please mute yourself, unless you are speaking actively, we would so appreciate it for the background noise. And Yogesh, thank you for volunteering. He had said probably 8 months ago, I'd love to facilitate a movie club. So I'm so glad, Yogesh, you were so patient with us. And we welcome you and welcome you all. And I will turn it over to Yogesh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like an specific spiel prepared. I do obviously have many thoughts about the movie, but I didn't. Yeah, I wasn't going to like lecture about it. So yeah, if anyone, I guess we can just start if anyone has their own reactions they'd like to share, like specifically about the movie. We've been talking about sort of the social history of the era a bit already, but specifically with regard to the movie.
I think Kevin's hand went up first.
Okay.
Yay. I win. I had a specific question about the film. It's bookended by the dream.
Mm.
The dream of the matador and the bullfight. Um, and I've seen the movie a bunch of times, and I've never really gotten what the meaning of the dream is supposed to be. Okay, we learn at the end that what's his name?
General Black.
General Black, right? Blackie. He finally realizes that he's the matador, but I still don't really get the symbolism or the significance of the dream and how that relates to the story. So, does anyone have any ideas about that?
Anyone? Okay, well
I
then.
just thought it was a measure of like a stressful military life, as opposed to a specific symbol, but more like he's this man under pressure from the system and is now just like can't even sleep at night, just different paranoias are affecting him that I think are may not be directly related to the Cold War thing, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think there is some specific symbolism in the Matador, though. We okay. Are we raise? I wasn't. I don't know how the format of this works. Just like, do we call on people when they raise hands, or?
Oh yeah, Yogesh, it's cash, but yeah, if you want to just call out people's names to have their hands raised, or let me know if I can help.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't keeping track of who raised it first, so I feel weird.
I
um,
think Ruth had her hand raised to
okay. Good. Go.
to the discussion, but I don't know about Michael. Did you want to answer my question or?
Yeah, I took it as symbolism in that he ultimately was the one who I think had to bomb New York. So he was like the Matador represents this person of power who's just killing this innocent animal as part of this ritual, and he ended up having to do that at the end himself. And so I don't think he knew how to read that himself, and then that's why it came back then because it's reinforced, I think, his initial dream.
Yeah. Yeah, I realize this. I always had to remember the line as the Matador, it's me. I realize this. He actually just says the Matador, me. I think the it's is meant to be implied though. But I mean, this policy, so foreign policy at the time has been called brinksmanship, right? It specifically, it was all about being on the edge, mutually assured destruction, essentially playing a very deadly game and treating it like a game. I mean, I feel like the symbolism is kind of tied to that, right? It's basically saying that he's been basically, playing an extremely dangerous game as though it were only a game and realized too late that, how high the stakes actually were. But there's multiple ways to interpret it.
Did the bull end up killing a human in the dream? No.
No, it was the other way around.
No,
Yeah.
well, obviously the bull went down, but
Yeah.
wondering if he got in any damage in the process.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I think the Matador gets the bull to charge at him, right? That's kind of the whole idea is that I mean, in theory at least, deliberately puts himself in danger by inviting a dangerous enemy to attack him. Basically engaging in a antagonistic game with an opponent who is seen as like a deadly enemy for the purposes of entertainment. But it's worth maybe worth reflecting on whether that kind of game, how it actually ends when people do that in real life.
And
Uh,
Ruth,
Ruth, yeah.
Thank you. I've never figured out what the bull was either, and I've seen it a ton of times. Actually, I raised my hand because I had a question to ask you, Yogesh. So what made you choose this film for us to look
Yeah.
at?
Yeah, so I think in probably during the 70s class at least, maybe to other times, multiple people recommended Sidney Lumet's book, Making Movies. I think Juzo definitely recommended it. A few other people did. Yeah, I did. I thought I owned a copy. I think over time I've bought copies of it and then given them to people, and then they never returned them, and I've bought new copies and so on. I certainly owned it several times in my life. Maybe not right now. It's interesting because he talks in depth about. I read that book first when I was in high school, and at the time, I think 12 Angry Men was probably the only Lumet movie I'd seen. And so I read what he had to say about these movies, and then I watched them. And many of them, Dog Day Afternoon, Long Day's Journey to the United States, became among my favorite films. The strange thing is he barely talks about Failsafe at all. He only mentions it once, as I recall, in that book, which is when he is a section when he's saying he's talking about how before he would start a film, he would condense the theme of it to just one sentence, sometimes even one word, but at most one sentence. And he didn't feel comfortable getting started on the project unless he could boil down its essence to one sentence. And in the case of Failsafe and a couple of other movies, including Network, it was a the same 4-word sentence he applied to all of them. Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, the same 4-word sentence, which was "the machines are winning." Again, there are many things, as in many great films. There are many different themes going on and many different ways to interpret it. But it's yeah, hard not to see the relevance of that statement grow and grow with every passing year.
Anne?
I'm one of the reasons why I was curious about your choice of the film is that it ends up being very, very relevant. Not only did we just see Henry Fonda in two other very important roles, including another president, young Mr. Lincoln, but Tom Joad in Grapes of Wrath. And the other is that, we're living in a kind of unstable world right now. I'm not worried about the exact issues in Failsafe, but my mind did wander to what would it be like if it was our current president, down in that room, trying to assure an adversary. But I'm getting ahead of our discussion. But I thought it was fun seeing Henry Fonda again.
Christina.
Christina, I think we had Carol and then Christina.
Oh, okay.
Carol?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if other people remember Russian Colonel Petrov in 1983, who probably single-handedly stopped a nuclear exchange. But when that happened, I thought back to this movie and the Matador. And in fact, I watched Failsafe again after that event, and it seems to me to just have something to do with responsibility without any real guardrails or controls. Um, and I can't be very specific about it because it's an image that mainly works visually for me, and I have trouble putting into words what I think it's doing. But that was that event was a real potential failsafe if he hadn't decided to ignore what he was supposed to do.
Christina?
I found it relevant not only for the machines taking over and making sort of human interaction more difficult to stop some bad outcome, but also Russia as the enemy. So we have, the foreign minister in Anchorage wearing a USSR sweatshirt and we're moving submarines around, like the US is moving submarines around the world. And I feel like, unlike that time, I don't think about a clear and present threat from Russia like every day when I wake up, So it's more like we're going about our lives. But this threat, however much politically you want to believe it's real or imminent or whatever, is a different discussion. But the threat is the adversarial nature of our relationship is certainly increasing.
Yeah, to clarify what I said earlier, when I said I mean, when I rewatching this movie earlier today, certainly I thought about AI and, or increasing dependence on machines and that kind of thing. But I think the interpretation that Lumet was maybe going for was the threat of humans turning into machines, of putting aside their ability to empathize with other people, of putting aside their, tacit judgments that machines can't replicate, and of seeing other people through the lens of, for instance, through an ideological lens, just as enemies on the other side, rather than as human beings. That was sort of the machinization, I think, that the movie is warning about. But yeah.
And also just following that makes me think of how he had to follow the commands like a machine would. He wouldn't listen to his wife. He wouldn't listen to Henry Fonda. I mean, so that brings.
Kevin?
There were discussions in the film about the machines that the escalation would take place so quickly that only machines could handle it, and that so it wasn't so much that people were becoming mechanized. It was more that we were giving the power to the machines because the decisions had to be made so quickly that we couldn't possibly do it, ourselves. and there was a give and take on that in the Pentagon room and in the I think with the congressman in Omaha as well. So that was kind of interesting, and that I felt was really relevant. It struck me in a way this viewing that it hasn't in other viewings from earlier days. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, there was a movie released a few years later after that called Colossus: The Forbin Project, about an AI that is empowered to make a lot of decisions and ends up taking over the world, and that also has a very bleak ending. Yeah.
Ruth.
Just kind of to combine those two thoughts that just happened, because the movie can be both salt and pepper. You don't have to choose just one meaning. So for me, it people have represented to me just now the two big components. Again, there's one that the machines are becoming so sophisticated and we're deferring to them and we can't control them anyway. And what, oh my God, what are we doing to our society? I mean, it's condemning it for sure. It's not saying rah, rah, the machines are getting better. Isn't that wonderful? So not condemn is not the word. It's worrying about that. So it's worrying about the role of machines when they take over. But at the same time, the movie almost ends before the bombing, President Henry, wouldn't that be nice? President Henry Fonda says what someone also just said in this discussion, which I put it in the chat. I think he says it's big, all right, meaning how can he actually says something like this is hard, this is big, machines are difficult. He didn't say all those words. He said something like it's big, all right, but it still depends on what each of us does. So the movie is also saying to us, you can't play dumb. You can't say, oh, the machines are going to do it. We have no choice. You still have choices to make. And here I am exemplifying that. And the Russian premier is exemplifying that. We're making some choices in what seems like an out of a control situation where we don't have any power or control. So I think the movie is saying both things. It's saying, oh my God, what are we doing? What are we building? What are we allowing to control us? And at the same time, it's saying, yes, but, or yes, and it matters the decisions that each of us does, that we're each responsible. And that president, good old President Henry, said something like that more than often. I mean, not
Well,
more than once.
yeah, well, but his choices are still extremely constrained, though, because of the system, which has gotten so powerful and taken so much control that it forces some extremely, it essentially forces a choice between some extremely unpleasant options rather than a free choice. I do think that when he talks about how we have to sort of take control and, exercise our will, it's earlier in the process. It's in the planning of these systems. It's what I think if we don't exercise, judgment and caution when the systems are being set up, they will eventually grow so powerful that our options will be constrained. Um, yeah, right.
David?
David, you're on mute.
I managed to lower the hand though. I agree with you, Yogesh, and I just want, I think, even to emphasize that thread more than you just did, it feels like it was more a commentary about the institutional framework than the tech. I mean, yeah, the tech is what ultimately broke because it was jammed, but it was like the institutional framework of Walter Matthau basically saying this is the system of number of humans over here versus number of humans over there. This is how it has to be a first strike. Like that whole thinking is what I kind of got away was like the big moral kind of emphasis on the movie, like the military industrial complex between the two countries, more so than the technology. So it's fun to compare it to AI now, but I don't know. That's kind of the gist that kind of sunk home the most with me was more the institutionalized system of threats and how by necessity you got to up it's like how many missiles do they have? We have to have more. Like that whole thought process that Walter Matthau and his kind of think tank persona embodied. Yeah.
And I think you could say the same thing about AI today, that if we just keep letting it grow in power without making proactive decisions about it, there may come a time when we won't have the scope to make those decisions anymore. But I think Kevin was next.
Oh, what? Let me defer to Jen because we haven't heard from her yet.
Okay.
I just wanted to piggyback onto what David said around the institutional aspect of this, but the word that came to me as I was watching it was how callous they were in their discussions. It made my skin crawl. And in thinking about it, I thought forward a bunch of years to during the Vietnam War the body counts that people had. And I remember it just got to be a phrase without a human meaning, because we heard it so much. And this really made me think about that hardly anybody in this movie called him on how callous he was.
Him meaning Professor Groteshella?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Kevin, you want to bounce?
Yeah. I was reflecting on did Henry Fonda have any other, or were there any other possible solutions? I mean, the Gotteschaller, is proposing a first strike, which I think the movie pretty much rejects. I don't think it ever really takes that position. It kind of always puts that forward as a straw man that gets shot down. So could the president have done anything other than what he did? I'm hard pressed to come up with any other solutions that gets him out of the situation, unless he. Well, even yeah, I mean, it's a very well posed problem, a logical problem. It's almost like game theory, the way the script proposes it, and I think it really boxes him into just that one solution, which I actually seems very creative on his part. I mean, I could imagine other people not even thinking of doing something like that. So I wonder if anyone else has any thoughts.
Yeah, this was basically a game theory problem. Like, how do you signal your commitment? How do you send a convincing signal that will show that this was not an attempt to an intentional attempt to harm your enemy? And yeah, like as he did try the sort of game theory thing of I'm signaling my intention to harm myself. Is that enough? But it wasn't, and realistically, it probably wouldn't be. But yeah, I mean, he did, they don't tell you what the character's background was. It wouldn't surprise me if he had a background in economics because he did clearly think it through like a game theorist.
Well, and Kevin, I thought about that same question, as I know many of us did, about why New York and not Washington, D.C. And, the only answer I came up with was he was actually protecting the seat of government for us in selecting New York as a substitute, even though, you could make an argument in many ways that that was more harmful, such as to the economy and the number of people that would be killed. But that was, I mean, I wondered the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, DC isn't even one of the 20 most populous cities in the U.S. I think it wouldn't. Yeah, it wouldn't. I personally, just my opinion, it wouldn't have sent the same kind of message. But I can see why people would think differently.
At one point, President Fonda mentions the the situation of Isaac, Abraham and Isaac, and I just lost the words to describe it. The Binding of Isaac. And at the time I thought, what's he getting at? That, he would quote this from the Old Testament. And then I think it became clearer at the end of the movie that that's where his wife and Blackie's wife was New York. And the idea was, this is a test. If you will do this. I don't know. It seemed kind of harsh, echoing Jan's thought. But I also thought at the time that it may not have been clear to anyone what he was trying to say.
Yeah, that's a good example. I mean, the screenwriting of this does a good job of sort of drawing on larger cultural narratives to make points very efficiently and keep the pace moving quickly. This is one of the big strengths of the movie, the way it moved through all of these highly dramatic things at a very efficient pace.
Um, Yogesh, something that I was interested to point out, or just for discussion, was,
Mm,
what struck me at the very beginning is I had never seen this film before, and I'm really glad to have seen it now. That was an excellent choice for discussion, especially in current times.
mm,
Uh, but the whole like starting the narrative at 5:30 a.m. right? In these different parts. And the logistical part of me was like, wait, is it 5:30 in each time zone or is it 5:30 in one place? And it's all these places, but that's a sidebar. But I was also thinking, okay, so some of the major influencers of this situation were up all night. And it really showcased the human aspect. Like Walter Matthau's character was, I'm like, who stays up until 5:30 a.m. at a cocktail party and looks perfectly fresh? All of them were like, yeah, it was like it was 10 p.m. or something. That was just kind of funny. But I was like, wait a minute, as the film went on, I'm like, they were all up drinking cocktails until like 5:30 in the morning. And, you know, Blackie was, you know, tossing and turning and sweating with his recurring nightmare of being in at the bullfight. And let's see, Colonel was it Cassio?
mm.
I'm still not sure what was going on there with him and his drunk parents or his drunk people that were supposed to be his parents. I'm like, he doesn't seem like he got a very good night's sleep. I mean, a lot of these people who are influencing these decisions, they were showing them as so human, right? And fallible
Mhm.
to uh, lack of sleep or stress or, psychological influences. And I thought that was, very purposeful and very interesting.
And they did it with the Russians as well, even though you never saw any of them. One of the most dramatically effective moments is at the very end when like that marshal just disappears as a character and is replaced by another character. Yeah, they don't even have to depict or explain what happened. Your mind fills it in. Yeah, Christina.
I'm curious about what people thought about the Walter Matthau character Groucho Sheila, because just following on chronologically in the movie from what Kelly was just talking about, there's that scene where he slaps the woman in the car, that whole scene. And then
Mhm.
he's such a strong and interesting voice in the movie. And I'd love to hear like just people's thoughts on that.
I think he was modeled after Herman Kahn,
Mm.
and was also the inspiration for Doctor Strangelove. I mean, for the character, yeah, that was his character's name. But there were a number of intellectuals who were either economists or physicists in the 50s and 60s who took positions like that. I mean, Edward Teller is another one who was a real maximalist in terms of the use of nuclear weapons. And so I think he was essentially the stand-in for those thinkers in this film.
I'm assuming they were constructing his dialogue to make us hate him because like he was essentially epitomizing everything that the writers were against from a moral framework and just institutional structure point of view. So I think that's maybe why they had him slap the woman and just be kind of gross.
Well, I mean, I think actually the slapping was probably supposed to make him seem less unsympathetic because he wasn't eroticizing, the disaster. And similarly, like in his last speech, he actually like starts to read the room in the middle of his speech. Like I think it's a deliberately nuanced portrayal. He's certainly more unsympathetic than anyone else in the movie, but they also hold back on making him and it's also interesting just comparing, like he's basically making the same argument that like, George C. Scott's character is making in Doctor Strangelove, but he's not portrayed as a caricature the way the analogous characters in Doctor Strangelove are. Anyway, yeah, Carol, was it Carol?
Carol?
One of the things that first time I saw the movie when it first came out really jarred me and made me think, and it still does, is the line, if 40 million people are going to be killed, I'd rather they be Russians than Americans. And as horrifying as that is, I have to admit that I would want to survive, you know. And so when you start looking at that kind of moral calculus, um, it gets really scary.
Yeah, and I think that's, part of what it is saying is that once we decide as a society to engage in mutually assured destruction, at some point something will happen. And the mere fact that we started along the path of thinking in these terms essentially sets the table for disaster, regardless of what form it ends up taking. But Michael.
Yeah, one visual touch that I really liked was how when the fighter planes were shown, they were shown in like a photo negative quality. So like probably at this point in time, you're coming off of 20 years of World War II movies where usually the planes are the good guys and we're rooting for them. This time there are planes, but they're the bad guys because we really don't want them to be successful. So they showed them in a very abstract way that kind of separates them from the normal heroism of how they depict planes normally.
Yeah. And my memory of the DVD commentary is that basically the Air Force wouldn't cooperate with them, so they had to use a very limited amount of stock footage, which meant that many of the shots of the fighter planes are the same shot, just treated differently. For instance, when they show like the 5 fighter planes scrambling, that's actually the same shot repeated 5 times. They just optically treated it so that it looked different each time.
But I like also how they then complemented that with the humans inside the planes who are real people who had real fears and worries and lives and families inside these abstract planes that were going to ultimately cause the destruction.
Yeah, again, Doctor Strangelove similarly shows the people in planes, but in a lot less human fashion. Mm. Even though you could usually can see their faces more in Doctor Strangelove, where you really could only see their eyes for the most part in this film.
Well, yeah, Yogesh, I'm so glad you brought that up because I thought, they did such a subtly effective job, right? With this much of their face covered. And they were supposed to be, right, cool cucumbers
Mm.
as characters, but you could see them acting with their eyes and you could see the 3 people in the plane in most of the shots, right? You saw the navigator,
Mm.
the co-pilot, and the pilot. And they all were a little different, and it was really cool just to look at it from an like an acting with the eyes
Mhm.
exercise. I thought that was so impressive, and I would love to have heard the direction for those shots.
Yeah, Lumet did an
Especially
amazing job. Yeah, casting people who could act with their eyes and trusting them to carry the drama. Yeah.
Ruth.
Yeah, this is such a great movie. One of the things that I really enjoyed also was enjoyed, it's not a movie you enjoy, um, were the 2 characters who wound up um, performing the acts of killing, Blackie and the Edward Binns character, the
Mm.
guy played by Edward Binns, the pilot. And those were the two, and I'm probably missing others, but at least those two, early on, you knew they were not happy with the mechanization. It was verbalized. So Blackie, from the beginning, he's letting you know that this whole thing is he's worried about the nuclearization and the uh, all their systems. He was not a happy camper on that, right? He was very verbal. And Edward Binns, when we first meet him in the must have been the staff rec room of the base, he is talking with someone how it's no longer personal. Said, look at those, our new colleagues, the rest of the people who are going to be on the plane. We barely know them because they always mix up our teams. We don't fly with the same team over and over again like we used to. Do you remember that when we introduced this? And he actually talks about I like it when it was personal. I don't like it that we don't have a connection to the people we fly with because they change the teams on purpose to prevent it being personal. And then he's the one who winds up dropping the bombs on Moscow. So those two characters were spokespersons early on about what was scary and upsetting. And those became the two killers.
Carol?
I don't remember if it was Failsafe or another one of these movies, but when I saw it, and I think it was Failsafe, it was prefaced in the theater with a projection on the screen. It is the stated policy of the United States Air Force that something like this could not happen.
That comes at the end of Failsafe after the
Yes.
credits.
Oh,
Yes.
it was, yeah.
It's far and away the funniest moment in the movie.
Yeah, okay, you've got it. I think by that time I was looking away from the TV screen when I was watching this time, but I remember what I remember is that everybody in the theater laughed. You know,
I mean, even in the 2000s when I watched it with friends, we all burst into laughter at that. Yeah.
yeah, it was very distressing to my U.S. Air Force father that this movie, I mean, he wouldn't have stopped it. He didn't believe in, censoring things, but he just thought it was a ridiculous movie. So,
Mm. All right. So I guess the obvious, yeah, or okay, Ruth. Go on.
Yes, I thought I'd ask, as long as I heard what Carol's saying about how her dad responded, that he did or would have thought this was a ridiculous premise. So, folks, for how many of you was this a serious, legitimately serious issue? When I saw it, theme, topic, whatever, was or was it? Oh, this is silly. It'll never happen. So I'll just vote
Okay,
very,
sure.
very serious to me. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Not everyone. Some people thought it was uh, 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 oh, an exaggeration of what might be possible. Well, obviously, well,
I
anyway.
mean, I'm not sure what I'm raising my hand about. That I thought could happen, or that I thought it would never happen.
That you thought it could happen, that it would happen.
Oh, of course it could happen.
One thing that relieved the seriousness for me was the envelopes. Like the top secret envelope that you pulled. It just seemed like such a throwback, and it was kind of a lighter moment for me anyway.
But
lighter
probably the
because
way
you
they did it.
it
Right.
wasn't lighter out of intent. It was lighter to you because of when it took the incongruousness now that we are in 2025. Yikes.
Susan, did you
The
want
only
to say
thing, the
something?
only thing that seemed weird to me about that was the envelope that said Moscow. I mean, it would have been like coordinates, it would have been some coded, GPS or map coordinates. It wouldn't said Moscow. It's like, oh, I get to look up Moscow in my road atlas in the cockpit here and figure out where it is.
Susan, did you want to say something?
Just that when I think about probability, I think more in terms of some horrible accident happening because there's been accidents in other places, and I think of that. And my first thought when this movie was over was, oh, that was Henry Fonda, but we have Donald Trump. Yeah, it makes a difference.
I mean, I think it was a very deliberate choice to make the president hyper competent, specifically to say, as someone said earlier, it's an institutional issue. The way that the system is set up means that even under the best possible leadership, disaster is still quite possible. Which is another reason I personally find this movie superior to Dr. Strangelove, which keeps insisting that everyone in a position of power is a buffoon to the point where, like, it completely weakens the critique. Because are you critiquing the system or the buffoonery?
It's a parody.
Oh, and I think there have been several real, genuine near accidents
Hmm.
and misunderstandings, just the US Russia,
Yeah,
not counting other nuclear powers. But I know there have been incidents that have been like this close to one person. I think like where one human's decision stopped it. Like at
yeah,
least
there were a few
Russia's
references. Someone
China.
mentioned Stanislav Petrov. There was
Yeah,
Operation Able Archer.
that's one of
The
them.
Yeah, the incident that the movie K-19, The Widowmaker, is based on was another. And even like the passenger flight at the beginning, like this movie was like a few decades before, the Korean Airlines Flight 7 was shot down in Soviet airspace. Similarly, because they just couldn't take a chance on something being in their airspace. So, many, innocent people, including a U.S. congressman, died.
Lisa?
You're on mute still.
You're on mute, honey.
You're muted.
I unmuted myself. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the Walter Matthau character and when he was in the car with the lovely woman and he made an emphatic point that he was not like her, that they were different people.
Mhm.
And I thought that's interesting because you have this very um, hard-boiled kind of scientific black and white kind of presentation character, but he wasn't cruel, and he really wanted to make that point that he wouldn't take pleasure. Like he could analyze everything down to the last detail, but he wouldn't take pleasure, in eliminating millions of people the way her character was represented. Um, so I just thought that was kind of an interesting portrayal. And I really saw the movie as kind of not so much about technology. I think someone said this before, maybe it was you, David, but more about all the different, how complex, a situation like this is, like when we're faced with uh, a situation of this magnitude, how we've got the moral, the ethical, the practical, the economic. Uh, it's just so complicated. I thought it was just brilliant the way every single aspect, every facet, of concern and interest, was represented.
Yeah, since we're getting toward the end of the hour, maybe I'll put a bit more of my opinions out there. I one thing I thought was interesting in terms of taking kind of a more balanced view of the movie, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, but I think still has some flaws. I think what it was interesting to me, and just from a filmmaking perspective, was that all of the scenes that felt like they wanted to make a point, which mostly came toward the beginning, were a lot weaker than the scenes in which the story just unfolded, and they were also a lot less effective at making points. People also feel that way.
Was more didactic, I think.
Right. Yeah. And the scenes where again, someone mentioned the, opening envelopes. Like it was a directorial choice to dwell on it. And part of it was kind of the naturalistic style, the sort of immersing you in the situation by showing you the actual tactile things people were doing, which is something many modern filmmakers won't do, which is kind of an annoyance for me. But it also it was basically a directorial choice to focus on the way that what was happening rippled through every single person and affected them as a human being. And you saw, even people with small roles like Dom DeLuise, you still got to see how they were being affected by the situation, which I think in many ways spoke to the themes of the movie more than all of these speeches that were actually trying to tell you what the themes of the movie are. Because one of the themes of the movie is that everyone is a human being and as such has value. And that is something, I think someone made this point earlier, but that's almost the first thing that gets forgotten once you start thinking in terms of realpolitik. But yeah, Kevin.
I thought one of the most effective scenes in the whole film was the when General Bogan makes the personal connection with his counterpart in Moscow. And they reminisce about the time in World War II in London, and then at the very end they say goodbye to each other and they call each other my friend. And I thought that had one of the most powerful emotional impacts of the whole film. I think that speaks to your point.
Yeah, it's like it took something of this magnitude to make people remember that they are all humans first and foremost, and not just people on one side or the other of a divide. Kelly?
Uh, Something else that I didn't notice, but my partner did, and I was like, oh yeah, was that there was no music.
Hmm.
And no music to make you feel the way you're supposed to feel in a scene. And that seemed, I was like, that is always cool when that's a choice, but especially in a film like this, I thought, oh, how powerful to have, and not just no score, but just the absence of sound, the sound design took that chance. And I don't know, relative to 1964 or the early 60s, but that still just to me stands out as making that emotional impact in the lack of sound in between dialogue and in between, just normal ambient noise was so effective to me.
Plus black and white.
Right, stark black and white.
Yeah, on rewatches especially, you notice how expressionistic the lighting is. In spite of it being designed, so many of the choices were about naturalism, and especially in the acting and the framing and so on. But the lighting was very expressionistic. I mean, every time I rewatched that scene with the actress playing Edward Binns' wife, I notice how central how much light is cast on her and everyone else in shadow to really drill. This is who you should be paying attention to. But yeah, yeah, I don't see a lot of comparisons between this film and Dog Day Afternoon, even though they're both Sidney Lumet films. But Dog Day Afternoon also, aside from the Elton John song at the beginning, also has no non-diegetic music in it. And in fact, I feel like a lot of the same choices were made directorially for the same reason, I would say, as in Dog Day Afternoon, particularly the use of the ensemble cast. Like, there's always lots of people in the background, and you're always seeing how they react to everything, even when they're not the point of the movie. The point of the scene isn't about them. It's one of the things that I like most about Lumet as a filmmaker. He really believes in this, maybe because of his theater background, he really believes in the idea of the ensemble, like that everyone is involved in the scene and all of the characters are doing things that support, the action, even if they're not the big star or the one who has the lines. Yeah, yeah, Ruth?
I just want to say thank you. I'm going to think about that comment. So everybody, all of the they're not bit players, but all of the supporting people, but they're actually less than the supporting. They're a level down. You know who they are, and their presence has some purpose or
Mhm.
some impact or some effect on you as the viewer. I'm thinking back to Dog Day and all the clerks in the bank. And yeah, thank you, Yogesh. That's really interesting. And certainly true in this movie when you, again, Dom DeLuise is a good example, but he does have an important role. But yeah, very okay. Thank you. I'm gonna go think about the other Lumet. He's absolutely among my top favorite directors. I'm gonna go think about the other movies. Well, wow. Okay.
Well, I was going to say, you said no music, no major sound, no color, and not much on sets either. I mean, the sets are really stark. I mean, can you imagine if this were to really happen and the president would be by himself with somebody he'd never met as his translator, and that's it, just by himself? I mean, that's just totally unrealistic. So, I mean, I just think that the whole focus is on the character and the dialogue, 100%, the acting, and everything else is removed as a possible kind of distraction or extra bit.
And that's true of the screenplay as well. Like there's so little fat to it, and it builds to a climax and then ends, which movies are not very good at doing nowadays. But yeah, Kevin.
It's interesting to think about the other movies that Lumet was making at the time. I think immediately prior to this film, he made The Pawnbroker, which we watched in one of mixed classes not that long ago. And I believe also that did not have didn't really, it had some diegetic music, as I recall. He was listening to the
I
radio.
think Quincy Jones did the music for
Oh,
that,
that's
but
right. Yeah, the Quincy Jones score. That's right. That's right. But did it show up much? It was in the credits. Did it show up much during the film? I can't remember. Another film that he made with Henry Fonda, not that much earlier than Failsafe, was 12 Angry Men, of course.
mhm.
And I suspect that's where he got the idea of maybe casting Fonda for this role.
Yeah, and in both cases, he symbolically uses Henry Fonda like as the iconography around Henry Fonda as like the icon of righteousness. In both cases, it takes on a force within the narrative. Like so, it's a very useful casting. In much the way that Sergio Leone's casting of him in Once Upon a Time in the West was in the exact opposite fashion. Um, but
I always think
yeah,
that Henry Fonda, if he had been the right age, would have been Atticus Finch. Another one
yeah.
of the upright, you can
Mm,
rely on me, high integrity, you know,
mm,
macho without being macho,
yeah.
very, yeah.
But I also have a lot of praise for Larry Hagman because Larry Hagman had a very long career after this, and he was never as good as he was in this. And I think even though he had many very iconic and memorable roles in pop culture, he never had a role this complex, as far as I could tell, because he had to not just act his character's emotions, but to act a completely unseen character's emotions and give his interpretation of that unseen character, as there's like four layers of subtext in like every line he has, basically.
Well, Yogesh, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, Larry Hagman never came back after doing this performance. I mean, what potential? And I mean, good for him. He was a working actor.
Hmm.
But still, you hate to think what he could have done. And maybe he did some Broadway or something. Let's hope.
Yeah.
He made plenty of money on the TV show, so
Yeah, Dallas.
and he's a working actor, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but this is the only film I think we see, or the only performance we see with that complexity and levels. And he was young. I wonder how someone can look that up. I wonder how old he was.
I
Yeah,
think
this
he
was
still had a little acne.
it's
Kind of,
definitely pre I Dream of Jeannie. Yeah.
yes.
All right, Kevin.
I have some fun facts about the book, if anyone's interested. So there's a couple of interesting threads with regards to the book. The book on which Failsafe was based, which was also called Failsafe, Came out in 1962, and it was serialized in the Saturday Evening Post in three installments of successive weeks in October of 1962. Does anyone remember what happened in October of 1962?
Cuban Missile Crisis.
Exactly. It came out during the Cuban Missile Crisis. That blew me away. The other thing is, it was the producers of Dr. Strangelove sued because they believed that this book was a plagiarism of the 1958 book called Red Alert, on which Dr. Strangelove was based. And I think there's a good case. They're very similar plots. So that went into court, and actually the settlement was that the major studio, whoever it was, had to pull the release of Failsafe, and it had to be distributed by the same company that distributed Dr. Strangelove, and they gave Strangelove a certain number of weeks of advance so that it got to come out first, and then the same studio then released Failsafe sometime afterwards in a somewhat more reduced publicity event because of this whole plagiarism suit. So you can go on Wikipedia and read about all this, but it's a really interesting and complicated legal situation.
Yeah, I read Red Alert, the novel Dr. Strangelove is based on. I don't know if people know this, but even though Dr. Strangelove is a comedy, the book it is based on is 100% serious. It's not even an attempt to be a comedy at all. And it also doesn't end with it basically it ends with the bomber getting through to Moscow, but as a just for fluky reasons, the bombs don't actually explode. So the whole thing it doesn't escalate, basically. Which is a lot. It's interesting that both the movie versions go a lot bleaker than the books did. Normally, you think it's the other way around. But yeah, commercially, I mean, it hurt Failsafe a lot to come out after Doctor Strangelove because it had basically marched through the same general plot and character archetypes that made them seem ridiculous before people could, were before Failsafe wanted people to take them seriously. I'm sure the makers of Failsafe would have preferred the opposite order quite a bit. Yeah, apparently, it was 33 when the movie came out.
Yogesh, may I ask the group, how many people, if any, saw this for the first time for tonight's class? Yeah. Oh, good. Are there any, just having seen it for the first time, any like first impressions or feelings of how haven't I seen this, or any comments from the first time viewers?
I had that thought, Kelly.
Why haven't I seen
How
this?
I missed that a bunch of years ago. I was really glad that it was picked.
Oh yeah, Jan, me too. I was like, I mean, this wasn't on my rate. I had never heard of it. And I'm like, how did I miss this? And now that I'm hearing this background, Yogesh, that you and Kevin are talking about, I was like, oh, maybe that's got something to do with why I never heard of it.
Also,
Yeah, I saw
Kelly,
Strangelove.
Kelly, we missed it because we weren't born yet. So
Well, I know, but like later.
Yeah, Kelly, I think I'm 30 years older than you, and that's why I've seen it and you haven't.
But I mean, I had heard about Dr. Strangelove for
yes.
50 years, and I had
Yeah.
never heard of this.
Yes.
Yeah, me
I
too.
think for a while it was hard to find. I don't think it was one of those movies that got played on television
Yeah.
in syndication and stuff like that back when that was a thing. So as I recall, I didn't see it until I was maybe over 20 or something like that. I mean, it was a while. Yeah, I'd heard of the film because my parents talked about it, but I didn't get a chance to see it until I was much older. So I think there was a period there where you couldn't really see it.
Was this not a very commercially successful film also? Was it just not?
Yeah, I mean, in large part because of the lawsuit and everything that Kevin mentioned. Yeah, it wasn't promoted, and it just didn't. I mean, yeah, audiences had already seen Doctor Strangelove, so it just didn't have. But yeah, I mean, with regard to the age thing, I was born in the '80s, so anyone older than me doesn't have that excuse. But uh, what really, especially, and annoyed me before I saw it, and then infuriated me after I saw it, was that its reputation was it's the inferior version of Doctor Strangelove. And I think people haven't watched it. Similarly, they haven't watched Honor of Majesty's Secret Service because people think it's the worst Bond movie or whatever. It's far and away the best Bond movie, by the way. But yeah, no, that was kind of the reputation it had, was the inferior cousin to Doctor Strangelove. So only worth watching for historical interest, etc., etc. Then when I actually sat down and watched it, I was like, wow, this is not just better than Doctor Strangelove. It's one of the best movies I have ever seen in my life, and remains so. And that's in spite of the fact that there are many scenes I think are very clumsy, especially toward the beginning. But then once it gets going, you just forget about all that.
Well, I mean, I think we still have the excuse of not being born yet. You are a unique scholar of film, Yogesh. So
Fair
but
enough.
I'm more of a casual viewer and dabbling and getting a little bit intellectual about some things. But this is a great movie. I loved it. It was depressing though, and I knew what I was getting into. I knew it was Lumet. So, but interestingly, so I was looking at his extensive filmography, and he did The Day After. So I remember that one, which happened in the
What?
80s, TV movie, right?
I don't think The Day After I thought was directed by Nicholas Meyer.
I don't know. It was on his filmography as director, so I'll have to look at it. Maybe it was just
Hmm.
maybe he's assisted. I'm not sure, but that was a
Hmm.
TV movie. So that one I saw, like everybody saw that in the 80s, and Yogesh, you maybe
Are
weren't
you
born
talking
yet.
about The Day After Tomorrow?
No, the day
The Day
after the
After. It's
I
about nuclear war. So he kind of revisited this
I
scenario of a nuclear war happening, but it was, the aftermath of the nuclear war. I mean, the bomb hits in the movie too, but
I don't believe he had anything to do with
okay,
that.
I'll have to look again. But that's what I thought I saw, and I was like, wow. And I was watching the movie, so I didn't want to interrupt by deep diving into that. But that movie was in people's consciousness from the 80s. Like in the 80s, it was, I mean, very much the Cold War was still very active in my childhood, and we had the deck and cover drills and all that. And
Lumet did a movie called The Morning After,
oh, is it different? Okay.
That's yeah,
which
a very different movie.
Oh,
yeah,
I had nuclear war on the brain, and so I
yeah.
thought, okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Oh no, Danielle, I'm glad you brought it up because I went to like war games
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
Matthew Broderick and the
Good
movie you're
movie.
talking about, the TV movie about showing what it would be like
Yeah,
after nuclear war,
yeah,
which was
horrifying.
Yeah.
scarring,
There,
scarring,
there,
traumatic.
there was a similar UK telefilm called Threads. So, like, people in the US remember The Day After, and people in the UK remember Threads. They're like from the same era, uh,
Were
but
you raised there, Yogesh?
no.
Oh, okay.
So did anybody see the remake of Failsafe?
They remade it?
It was a
Yeah,
live teleplay.
2000,
With Clooney.
Oh,
but George Clooney was the pilot,
Stephen Frears directed.
and
oh.
Noah Weil was the translator, and the president was, wait for it, Richard Dreyfuss.
I like it.
Quite a change from Henry Fonda.
How
But-
was it, Jan?
Well,
What?
how was it?
Did you
No, I didn't
Jan?
see it. No, I didn't see
saw
it.
it.
I just wondered
I
if
saw it.
anybody else
Oh,
did.
Kevin, how was it?
It was actually quite good. It was done as a live television broadcast, but I think it was done on, I think if I'm not mistaken, it was done on HBO.
It was on CBS.
Oh, it was on CBS. Okay, but it was done
yeah, I
live,
saw it.
which was pretty interesting. And I thought it was a credible remake. I still like the original better, but it was fine. And Clooney holds his own.
Yeah, I think George Clooney was a driving force behind that project, even though he didn't direct it, but it was his idea to do it and as a live teleplay.
So wait a minute. If he wasn't the president, what part did he play?
The pilot.
Pilot,
Grady,
Oh,
the pilot.
the pilot who
Edward Binns, you mean? The
Yeah.
Edward Binns? Oh.
Yeah, Grady.
Mm.
Carol, did you have your hand up before?
No, I was just going to say in response to a little bit earlier that I think a number of those movies like On the Beach and Failsafe, they, and I'm speaking from having taught three generations of undergraduates. I think there was a time when younger people were just sick and tired of hearing people my age talking about duck and cover and all the scary stuff that we grew up with. And that's what happens. And so I think that's one reason that some of these movies really fell out of awareness, whereas Dr. Strangelove was something quite special and maintained its presence, I think.
Mm-hmm. Or like Americans forgetting COVID, like just wanting to just like it's not happening anymore. Yeah.
And Jan, had you had your hand up?
No, I took it down because I spoke.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, one of the more bleakly funny things I see is when I'm looking at the list of Nobel Peace Prize laureates, several organizations dedicated to nuclear disarmament keep winning the Nobel Peace Prize, but the nuclear weapons don't go away. But yeah, I don't know if anyone saw like Philomena Kunk, whichever was one of the specials, Kunk on
Oh,
Earth or
yes,
whatever. Yeah,
Pink on Earth is so funny.
yeah, but one of the more striking moments, yeah, was basically, when she's kind of, just kind of joking about, and she's like, but of course we don't have nuclear weapons anymore, right? And she's talking to like a historian, and she's like, but of course we got rid of those weapons, and and he says, actually, many countries still have nuclear arsenals, and you expect her, to then make it a joke about, or say something, in the style of the humor, something humorous about her, and then it just cuts back to her, and she just breaks down crying. And
Oh.
it's incredibly effective precisely because it's the opposite of what you're expecting then.
Mm.
But yeah, there's still a lot of searing commentary being made about nuclear weapons now.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, think about how many medical scientists have won awards for vaccines or cures for diseases, yet we haven't eradicated any viruses, really. Almost with measles, almost.
So smallpox was eradicated.
I guess that did blow itself out, but most of them are still come back. They still, when I was in medical school, we were taught that measles only existed like mostly in labs. I mean, it's just, and then here it is. It's like, there it is. So if we don't
Yeah,
keep an eye on it.
things are not looking good for progress forward.
No.
We've turned our heads. We're marching in the opposite direction.
Don't underestimate humanity's ability to screw itself over.
I know.
We were so close to polio being
Close to
eradicated.
perfection. Yeah. Right. Polio too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but now people don't want inoculations because they want to recall, they want to recall all these wonderful diseases. I find that absolutely incredible that people will refuse to inoculate their children
Oh, yeah.
because they want to revisit them.
Well, I know that we are 8:08 Pacific time. So, Yogesh, are there any um parting thoughts or anything you want to ask the group before we glide toward our closing time?
I guess we have a show of how many people have seen Doctor Strangelove? I just better. Okay. How many people think it's a better movie? Interesting. Yeah. It is always amazing how the cultural narrative set in because like the thing you always hear about Doctor Strangelove was that because it's based on a book that wasn't a comedy, you always hear Stanley Kubrick started to adapt it as a straight drama, and then in his great Kubrickian genius, he realized that no one could tell this story as a straight drama, so he had the genius idea to turn it into a comedy, and that's why we should worship Stanley Kubrick because he's such a genius. And yeah, it's again, it's not that I hate Doctor Strangelove. It's not a terrible movie or anything, but that narrative really bugs me.
Mm.
It's a completely different movie, Strangelove versus Failsafe. But I just want to give a shout out to Jan Maisel, who, along with her husband Doug, introduced me to the movie Dr. Strangelove. In fact, they brought it over. Was it on a laser disc to
Yeah.
our house for? Thank you.
You're
Anytime.
welcome.
Any other parting thoughts or comments? Oh, Danielle?
So I have not seen Doctor Strangelove in its entirety. I know that I like Stanley Kubrick. I'm a big fan, and I like all of the movies I've seen by him, except so I tried to watch it once, probably 30 years ago. So I was in my 20s. And I just thought it was inane. I was like, I don't understand this. It's just really surreal and goofy. Like I just didn't, and everything else I've seen by Kubrick, I really like a lot, a great deal. So I don't know. I should probably try to revisit it just out of curiosity to see if I can handle it because a lot of people really do like it and it was a huge hit. But
So even if you can't get into the satire and the parody, get into Peter Sellers in four different roles. If you want to look at some acting that just knocks your socks off in humor, it's humorous. It's not you're not supposed to be taking notes about how you're going to protect yourself from uh, uh, what's happening.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Besides it's being satire, it's a farce. And I love farce, but it's probably a minority taste. A lot of people just don't like it. They don't connect with what's going on. But it happens to be a genre that I like.
The characters crack me up and the names. I mean, Buck,
Not Merc Verdict.
Buck Turgidson and it's George C. Scott. Oh, come on.
Merkin Muffley, the president. I mean, that's a
And he's got that American accent he's going with that. And so it's just I guess for me the movie is the cast of characters. It's good that thank you, Carol.
You can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Right. You've no fighting in the war room. I mean, but I have used that so often in my job when people would start to be prickly. Well, no fighting in the it's the cast of characters. They all have a ridiculous name that fits somehow the character. They're over the top. The lines, I guess it's the lines. So it's not just farce, Carol. It is definitely if you do, it's part of it, but there's actually witty.
Yes.
Did that sound like Widdy? That's a Chicago accent. I meant a Witty, witty things. Witty, yeah. So yeah, it's not to go to and to well, it is actually, so I'm speaking too much. Yes, you could take it seriously, but it's a farce and a parody about something to take seriously. Whoa.
Is
Yeah.
that the only comedy Kubrick made? I mean, Clockwork Orange has comedic elements, but
Lolita is also a comedy.
Lolita's a comedy? Oh, okay.
And it also has Peter Sellers.
I think it would be interesting for those of us that haven't seen Doctor Strangelove for a while or ever to watch it now after having
I'll watch with
seen
you.
this recently. It should have a different component to it to appreciate.
We should have Yogesh do that for your next film.
Well,
Yes.
it's in mix next class. It's one of the
It
one of
is?
the movies in the
Oh,
syllabus
right.
of next
You're
class.
right, Kevin. It is.
There we go.
Yeah,
It'll be a few weeks out, but that's a good opportunity to see it.
that's right.
And it is weird how similar they are in terms of the plot. So it's very, and the spooky part, Yogesh and Kevin, who looked it up, is that and from two different books, did one of those authors steal from the other? Because that's one of the reasons it was so problematic for those films to be released near the same time, because the plot is like too similar, right? An accident, different opinions in the war. So instead of they called it a war room in this one too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
there's two war rooms, there's a base with the flyers, there's, so similar. And please, well, anyway, I won't go there, but at any rate, yeah. So
Sorry.
it's just that did the second author
Yeah.
I mean, I would be inclined to say no because I mean things like the hotline between the U.S. and Russia. I mean, I think that did exist in real life, but also if you want to create maximal drama, it seems like that's the direction you'd go in, having the leaders of the countries talk to each other on the hotline. Similarly, I mean, all this system of defense was already existing. Like imagining an accident that caused it to go wrong is a very small leap. Like,
There's that also really funny thing in Dr. Strangelove where the Soviet premier says, well, they're flying too low, they're under our radar, they're taking evasive action, we can't shoot them down, and the president says that's what they're trained to do. So,
Well, Yogesh, any parting thoughts or things you wanted to share with us tonight?
I mean, I think I touched on most of the major things, kind of how this situates within, Sidney Lumet's career. I think he's one of the most neglected Hollywood directors. And I say that as I didn't want to say this during mixed class, but I absolutely hate Network. I think it's a terrible movie. In spite of that, Sidney Lumet is one of my favorite directors, probably my favorite American director. I also don't like The Verdict very much, by the way. Um, but I think that, this movie, along with Dog Day Afternoon and a few others, show him at his best, show what he was capable of. Also, some of his weaknesses, like not really, or being extremely loyal to scripts. I think maybe this script could have used a little bit of editing. That Lumet was famously not a director who edited. He worked very closely with writers, and he just filmed what they wrote. Um, but yeah, I think nonetheless, this shows, many of his strengths. The ability to tell very high stakes stories in a way that makes them feel like you're watching them unfold naturally. The use of ensemble cast to really drive home the three-dimensional humanity of everyone involved, and yeah, the ability to sort of create this escalating tension where at the same time you're really interested in the characters and the drama of what happens. You're also watching a suspense thriller the same way that same thing in Dog Day Afternoon. It has the pull of a great suspense thriller at the same time that you care a lot about the human story. So yeah, I really wanted to drive home. Yes, this is an easy film to compare with Doctor Strangelove and with other nuclear-themed movies, but I wanted to really drive home how it situates within Sidney Lumet's career and kind of shows him at its best. But yeah, I just really thought it was an overall neglected film. It's a major Hollywood studio film, but it's not talked about even among when people talk about great 60s films, even talking about great 1964 films, people still talk about Goldfinger, A Hard Day's Night, and Doctor Strangelove, My Fair Lady, all of them. And this one just kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And it shouldn't be.
Well, Yogesh, thank you for choosing this film, for volunteering to host tonight. It was a wonderful discussion. And thanks to everybody who made time to come tonight and contribute or just participate by being here. This is your movie club. This is our movie club that we started to fill in the gaps in between mixed courses. And we hope you'll all keep attending in between courses. And anyone who's interested in choosing a film or wanting to facilitate a film, Anne and Ruth and I are all here to help. If you want help with choosing a film or how to facilitate or just getting you on the schedule. So we're so glad you're here. And Yogesh, again, thank you so much for the time and thoughtfulness you put in, especially considering all that's going on in your life this summer. And if I could say, Yogesh, in case anyone is under a news rock, that Yogesh is our champion for Jeopardy, Masters champion. Sorry if I'm getting the name of it wrong, Yogesh.
Jeopardy Master.
Jeopardy Masters, yes.
Jeopardy Masters. And we're so proud of you being in our little movie club in our movie group. So congratulations on that, Yogesh.
Awesome.
Yeah, that means a lot. And thank you for this opportunity. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
watched that too. I think you were up against two different psychiatrists, right?
Was that?
One of them at least was. I'm a psychiatrist, so
Oh
I
yeah, Javaria, definitely a psychiatrist. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
Wow. How about
Good
that?
job.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, my background is in psychology, so
There you go.
yeah.
People who study the mind.
Oh.
Or-
Clinical psychology, Yogesh,
No,
or
no, no, social psychology.
social psychology? Oh, yeah. Awesome. I'm an industrial psychology person.
Oh,
oh,
oh, yeah.
I'm
Um,
an
like movie.
amateur psychologist.
oh, amateur. That's good. Yeah.
I'm a patient.
I'm just
We're
psychotic.
all patients.
We're all psychologists. We're all patients.
We're all human behavior.
Why are mental health people or psychology people are overrepresented in our movie class and clubs?
Says a lot about our good taste.
I would say you are well represented. I wouldn't add
Well
value
represented.
judgment of
Yes.
overrepresented.
Oh, it's not not in a derogatory way, but yeah.
Statistical overrepresentation relative to the general population.
And just one thing before, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Danielle.
Oh, I was going to say we know what's fun to do in our spare time. Yes.
Just one last thing is that Anne and Kelly and I want to make sure you know that you don't have to think that you're like a film expert to say that there's a film or a director or a writer or a kind of film that interests you and you'd like to make a suggestion about something to be seen in through the movie club and then just help us, walk through a discussion and most important, tell us why you chose it. That's always so interesting. Why did you want us to watch something? So we'd like to encourage folks who obviously you take these classes because you enjoy films, and we have a huge range of background. So for some people never saw this movie, I probably have seen it a dozen times, right? It that's what's the strength of the discussion is the different perspectives and yeah, different perspectives and different uh, uh, enough perspectives, period. So blah blah blah. You all know my little sign that says "Be quiet," and that's what I need to do now. This is the "Be quiet" sign because I talk too much in the class. This is on my computer. I'm doing it again despite.
I need one of those too, Ruth. I'm gonna have to put one
No,
on.
but look how little it helps. It sits standing. Okay. Anyway, we would like to encourage, the three of us would like to encourage folks to just let Kelly know if there's a film or a director or a couple of films you'd like us to look at and talk about. That's yeah. So don't there's no qualifications gap or standard or any. Okay.
Are you having a hard time getting someone to follow Yogesh here? Is that what's happening?
Well, that is a hard act to follow. But
And Mike Siegel.
Well, we don't have a waiting list.
we do not have a waiting list. Juzos are just backup for if we don't have someone.
That tracks.
Juzo's got like 10 ideas. And he did say he's flying back from New York, and you all may or may not have heard him mention he's getting footage to make a documentary about Mick. And so Juzo was in New York with Mick and Mick's mom and did some interviews with them together. And it sounds like it was pretty neat talking about just Mick growing up and how he developed his interest in film. And they got some cool footage of them in her home in Staten Island. And Juzo has done some interviews with Mick in his home in San Francisco. So we'll see where that goes. Could be
Interesting.
cool. Yeah.
How cool is that?
And with Mick's next class, which is beginning on October 1st for a 10-week class, it's the films of 1960 to 1964. If for some reason you did not receive the email from me, please just send me a message. We'll probably be done with that class in mid-December. And then we'll plan a movie club for probably early to mid-January will be our next get together. So if you need any information on any of that, let me know.
So no movie club in September?
No, not currently anything scheduled for September. I think we're taking September off to watch our own interests and not have to think too hard. Kevin, are you volunteering to host a movie club for September?
Yes.
We should talk. We should talk.
We'll talk.
Yeah, let's talk.
All right, we'll talk. Stay tuned.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks
Yeah,
again,
that was great.
Yogesh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you.
everyone
Everybody.
for coming. Have a good rest of the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Kelly.
Bye bye.
Bye.